Hello, you found me. Excellent. My name's Beverly Hills and welcome to Storytime Online. Here in my tree house of tales, you can listen to stories from World Book Day's 2011 special £1 books. Your World Book Day token, if you have one, is a ticket to a world of imagination and adventure. Take one to a bookshop today and try for yourself. I've got some amazing stories lined up for you, so let's see who's waiting in the treehouse to read to us. In the treehouse of tales, we have Ramona Marquez reading Humphrey's Tiny Tales, My Treasure Hunt Trouble. What can little Humphrey mean?
Secret treasure. Can you keep a secret, Humphrey? Garth whispered. Of course, I whispered back, but since I'm a hamster and Garth is a human, all he heard was squeak. How about you, Og? Garth asked my friend. Og answered, boing, because he's a frog. He makes a very, very, very strange sound. There's going to be a treasure hunt in my garden tomorrow, Garth said, but it's a secret. Don't tell anybody, okay? Eek, I squeaked. I wasn't sure what treasure hunt was, but it sounded exciting. Boing, boing, Og splashed around in his tank. I've worked out some of the clues already, Garth said, and I haven't even told AJ. AJ was Garth's best friend. They were both in my class at Longfellow School. I'm the classroom hamster in room 26. Og is the classroom frog. It's part of my job to go home with a different student each weekend. Frogs can go for several days without food, so Og usually stays back in room 26. But this weekend, Garth invited everyone in our class to a party, including Og and me. Our teacher, Mrs. Brisbane, said we could both go, which made me unsqueakably happy. My cage and Og's tank sat on the desk in Garth's room. We watched as he cut paper into squares. The clues should be hard, he said, but not too hard. After all, somebody has to find the treasure. What's the treasure? I asked, wishing Garth could understand me. Garth stopped cutting paper and looked at me. Thanks, Humphrey, he said. You gave me an idea of a place to hide it. You're welcome, I squeaked. But what is the treasure? Boing, Og said. As Garth began writing on the squares of paper, I thought about treasure, treasure, treasure. I knew that treasure was something special, like gold and silver coins or sparkly jewels. In the books Mrs. Brisbane read to us in class, people were always looking for treasure. Sometimes treasure was buried in the ground, sometimes it was at the bottom of the sea. I scurried to the side of my cage near Og's tank. What kind of treasure would you like? I asked him. Og just stared at me with his goofy eyes. I didn't think coins or jewels would be much use to a frog. He'd probably rather have crickets or flies. Ooh! Coins or jewels wouldn't be of use to a hamster either, but I still wanted to go on the treasure hunt. Suddenly, a small voice called out, Ham! Garth's little brother, Andy, raced into the room and headed for my cage. He's a hamster, not a ham, Garth said. Ham, Andy shouted. I don't like being called a ham, but to be fair, Andy is quite small. Andy pointed at the squares of paper. What's that? That's where I'm writing down clues for the treasure hunt, Garth explained. What's that? Andy asked. It's a game where my friends have to follow clues and see who can find the treasure first. What's that? Andy asked, pointing at Og. That's Og the frog, Garth said. Now be quiet so I can write out the clues. What's? Andy said. Garth put his fingers to his lips and said, shh. Andy put his finger to his lips and said, shh, too. Garth wrote something on one of the squares. Frog, Andy said. He stared hard at Og. Og stared right back. Boing, Og said in a funny voice. Shh, Andy said. Og leaped into the water with a huge splash. Garth sighed. Mom, he called, can you get Andy out of here? He's bothering me. Garth's mum appeared at the door. Let Andy help. He wants to be included in the party. I can't write out the clues with him here, Garth complained. You can only stay if you watch quietly, Garth's mum told Andy. She put her fingers to her lips and said, shh. Okay, the little boy answered. Shh. At first, Andy watched quietly as Garth began writing on the slips of paper. What rhymes with flower? Garth asked. Boing, Og said. Poor Og. Doesn't he know that boing doesn't rhyme with flower at all? Shower, that works, Garth said. I was trying to think of a flower that showered when Andy asked, What's that? A clue, Garth told him, like a riddle. Riddle, Andy said. Aha, a clue is like a riddle. I like riddles. I was unspeakably curious about these clues. Garth wrote some more, and then asked me, What do you think of this clue? And he read it out loud. Everyone knows you must water a flower. Tip me over, I'll give it a shower. Great, 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 I squeaked. I had no idea what the answer to the riddle was. As Garth wrote, he murmured other strange words like frown and goal and basket. Then he opened a desk drawer and peeled out a treasure chest, so small he could hold it in the palm of his hand. Still, it looked like a real treasure chest, and even had a tiny lock on it. What's that? Andy asked. It's the treasure for the treasure hunt. It's something anyone in room 26 would love to have, Garth said. Anyone? Even a hamster? Remember, this is a secret, he added. Do you promise not to tell anyone? Promise, Andy said. Promise, I squeaked. Boing, Og agreed. To my surprise, Garth opened the door to my cage. Then he carefully put the treasure chest inside, covering it with my bedding. You leave it right there, Humphrey, he said, and don't peek. Okay, I promised, but even as I said it, I knew it would be a hard promise to keep.
Are you a member of the library?
I have a library card, but I never really use it. I usually just buy books and then give them to my friends.
If you could be any character in a story, who would you be?
There's a Jacqueline Wilson book called Midnight, and there's a girl called Jasmine in that, and I'd really like to be her, just because I think she's really pretty.
Is there a book you'd recommend to people?
Well, there's these books that my mum read when she was little. There's like a series of them. There's Little House in the Big Woods, Little House on the Prairie, and Little House on Plum Creek, and they're really nice. They're about like these girls, and they live in the olden times, and it's really nice. Like it describes everything, and so my mum recommended it for me, and I thought it was really good. And then I gave them to my friend, and she really likes them too. So I think they're quite good books.
What types of stories do you like?
I like kind of more reality stories. I like Jacqueline Wilson because she writes really good stories that kind of reality, sad kind of, but good. I just think those kind of books are good, and scary books.
Is there a book you liked, particularly when you were little?
Yes, there was a book called The Snail House, and it was about these people and they shrink, and there's a snail and its shell is a house, and the people have to live in it, and when it rains they it's a really nice story, but it can be quite creepy because there's this giant spider that tries to eat them, and because they're really small. So that's quite scary, but that's one of my books that I really liked.
What books are you reading at the moment?
There's a book called Scared to Death by Alan Gibbons, and it's really good. It's really big, and but it's really like you kind of want to read more. It's like, it sounds a bit like weird, like not actually scary, but it is. It is. It's like my brother read it and he gave it to me, and it's a really good book. It's like about this boy and his brother died when he was little, and then he comes back as a demon. It's really good though.
When do you like to read?
Before I go to bed, I like to read, and in the morning, if I wake up and I'm just like really bored, I like to read. Sometimes, very rarely, I read in the day, or I bring my book into school and I read then sometimes.
Is there a book that is your favourite of all time?
There's a... it's hard to like decide. No, there's not like my favourite book. There's so many books that I've read and they're all really good, and I'm reading a book at school as well called Wolf Brother, which is really good. That's really good. That's quite scary and good as well. So I'm still reading loads of other good books, so I can't really decide on my favourite.